and welcome to another episode of the Genius Podcast. I'm your host, Joshua the Genius, along here with my beautiful and talented co-host, Sarah Ann Mitchell. And today's episode is going to be centered around the global chip shortage. And we're also going to be talking a little bit about our experience as podcasters at the end of the conversation. So to get right into the conversation about the global chip shortage, I want to start with just educating you guys on kind of the background of what semiconductors are, or the chips, brains that are in all of the computers and smart devices that you guys use, and even home appliances. And I want to start with a gentleman by the name of Gordon Moore. Back in the 1960s, he was a founder of Intel. And Intel has been one of the biggest chip manufacturers and designers pretty much since the inception of semiconductors. And so there's a law, it came into law. It's not a natural law. The law is basically based on just the raw hard work and engineering that Intel does on a year-to-year basis on trying to make their microprocessors and their chips smaller and more efficient year over year. And so Moore's law basically states that every year, it started out every year, the chipsets would get smaller and 2 times as efficient. And so for about 10 to 20 years, that kind of held steady. But now we're seeing that pace level out to about 2 years. So every 2 years now, we're seeing the chips, the brains of computers, becoming smaller and becoming twice as efficient and twice as powerful.
I have a question. So is that because they're able to fit twice as many transistors on each microchip?
Yes. So when you talk about kind of measuring the power or efficiency of a chip, it's basically measured in the distance between the transistors, or how many transistors can fit on a single chipset, right? And so right now, the industry standard is 5 nanometers. 5 nanometers is very, very small. Nanometers is 1/billionth of a meter. 1/billionth of a meter. And so these chip manufacturers are able to fabricate or create these silicon-based microchips, and they're able to place trillions of transistors onto a surface area that's about the size of a dime, right?
Yeah, it's like the width of a fingernail. They're like super small.
Super small. So, every year they're trying to figure out, okay, how can we fit 1 billion more transistors onto the same surface area, or decrease the surface area and increase the number of transistors on that surface area. And so Intel has been the biggest player in the game for a long time. And so when we talk about the creation of chipsets, these are done in specialized manufacturing facilities. They're called fabrication facilities,
or fabs.
Or fabs for short, right? And so these are the highly sensitive and highly sterile manufacturing facilities that build and create these chipsets. And so they do that from kind of a wafer plate. It's kind of that building chips is kind of like baking
like
cakes.
Quartz? They're like made of quartz crystal.
They're made of quartz crystal
and
a combination of I think it's like 50 to 100 different other materials. And so on that wafer, right, it's kind of like baking a cake. They layer certain materials and substances on this silicon wafer. And so through that process, after all the layers are applied, they kind of punch out the chips from this wafer. And from one wafer, you can get to about from 1,000 to about 1,500 chips out of one wafer, right? And so with chips being kind of the brains and powerhouses of all the appliances and smart devices and consumer electronics that we use, chips are becoming kind of like the resource of oil, right? How oil was back in the 70s, the 60s, and 50s, how we really needed large amounts of oil to power our entire society and economy, from manufacturing plants to cars to diesel factories, anything that needed oil. We really needed an efficient way to gain access to that resource, and we needed it in an abundant value. Chips are now the same way. A lot of what we use in our day-to-day lives has embedded chips that's in it. If not one, thousands of different chips in it to power it. We talk about vehicles in the automotive industry. In cars, and with car manufacturers, there's over 1,000 microchips that go into
a single vehicle.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Well, I kind of want to draw our attention to now that politicians are seeing I think the pandemic really turned the spotlight on this industry, because before, years ago, America was making roughly about 37% of the microchips that were being utilized in the commercial market here in the States. So we were meeting that demand, not by a whole ton, but we were contributing to the supply. Now, though, we only contribute about 12% of the microchips being used in these consumer electronic items. So I'm talking about in cars, in computers, in iPads, in toasters, in blenders, in refrigerators. All of these things are utilizing microchips. So now that Congress sees the economic importance of these chips as a result of the pandemic, because a couple things kind of happened as far as the microchip industry when the pandemic hit. So we saw the decrease in car sales. So there was a drop off in demand for chipsets needed for vehicle production. But then there was also a rise in demand for microchips needed for things like computers and iPads, because everybody's working from home, everybody's learning from home. So there was this intense demand to get a iPad in every student's hand, a computer in every student's hand. So that created a shortage, even though, there was still some more wiggle room because of that drop off in the automotive industry, in that demand for chips for that specific industry. So the reason why I think Congress is now seeing how important this industry is because different Asian countries, I'm talking about China, I'm talking about Taiwan, Singapore, all these other countries, their governments are providing subsidies for people who want to start these businesses, because it's a very high upstart cost.
Very, very high.
You don't just wake up and say, I want to start a fabrication plant for microchips. Like, we're talking about investments of like $5 billion and more. Nobody who has that kind of money laying around to start that kind of business, but there's a large profit margin involved. And America is based on capitalism, so they're basically like, if you could do it, go ahead. But the government isn't going to try to help prop up the industry. Well, they pick and choose which ones they want to prop up. Anyways, I digress. But now the government is seeing the importance of the industry, and Congress is looking over a couple different bills to kind of funnel billions of dollars into helping this industry advance or get more of a foothold in the United States. Because I think, what is the name of the company in the U.S. that's kind of like the biggest producer? That's Global Foundries.
Yeah.
Global Foundries.
And so with Global Foundries, right? So Global Foundries has been one of the biggest fabs in the United States, right? They're based in the United States. I think they have 2 or 3 other fabs around the world, but they're centered in the United States. And what has been kind of a running joke in the tech industry is that Silicon Valley, right, where it bears its name of silicon, right, is not a creator or manufacturer of silicon. It's a fabless.
They're just the designers.
Yeah, they're just designers.
They design the chips, but they don't actually produce the chips.
Correct. So that brings us into the conversation of the creation of those chips and what companies are utilizing these chips, right? So Apple is one of the biggest consumers of semiconductors and microchips in the world. Okay,
All we gotta do is look at the well, Q3 is the biggest earning quarter for Apple. All we gotta do is look at the Q3 sales to see how many microchips Apple is pushing out there in their phones and in their computers.
And so, for a long time, there was only a select few fabrication companies that were able to gain large clients like Apple,
Be able to support
and be able to support them. Now there is the TSMC, right, the Taiwan Semiconductor Company, and they are based in Taiwan. And the CEO and founder of that company used to be a manager in
he was an engineer.
He was an engineer
at Texas Instruments in the 60s and 70s.
Yes.
And he was like, for people who are like deep into Apple culture, he's basically like the Wozniak. He made TI calculators what they are, like top of the line calculators. He was like a creative powerhouse for the company. But he got to a point, he, a Chinese citizen, came to the U.S. for his education, got a job at Texas Instruments, and really, like, changed the game for them. But he hit a ceiling. Like, he recognized that, like, I can't be a CEO in the U.S. Like, there are certain barriers in place that prevent certain people from advancing economically in the States. That's a reality. The American dream...
It's not the same for everybody.
It's the biggest, like, farce that... The great marketing plan. Anyways, so he recognized that there's a lot of money to be made in... He was building and designing these microchips for the Texas Instrument calculators, but he wanted to get into the industry himself. But that upstart cost, like we talked about earlier, it's really big.
To build a fabrication facility, you're talking upwards of $10 billion. Upwards of $10 billion.
That's rough.
Continue.
Yeah, so he basically went to Taiwan, and the Taiwanese government was like, hey, like, we're going to give you a subsidy to get this rolling. And now... his company is the front runner in the industry as far as so I'm gonna roll back a little bit. When Apple released their A4 chip, they completely like overturned the microchip industry, because up until that point, Intel was designing and manufacturing all the chips in all the Apple devices. With the A4 chip, Apple designed that chip. And the
A4 chip is the chip that was in the first generation iPad, and then it came into the iPhone 4. That's the A4 chip.
Right. So when we start talking about Apple moving towards the M1 chip, which is manufactured by this same Taiwanese company, the gentleman's name is Morris Chang, and the company is TSMC. So, Mr. Morris Chang, his company is the only company that's able to build these microchips within 7 and 5 nanometers apart. Intel and a lot of these other companies just don't have the equipment to get there. So, when we talk about this whole microchip conversation, and the implications that it has economically for the U.S. The U.S. and China are in this kind of like tug of war. It's almost like the Cold War, in a sense, that they're constantly trying to one-up each other for who's going to claim the title of the world's greatest superpower. And this microchip fabrication front is just another arena where we're seeing how America and China like duke it out. But China is 10 steps ahead of us in this race, because they've been investing in the industry for a while, whereas America has not, because they were basically like, every man for himself, do what you can, the government ain't go spot you nothing. Figure it out. That's capitalism. The fittest will survive. But when we talk about positioning our country in a place where it can be competitive, that's not realistic. We talk about the buying power of an individual versus the buying power of a country. Like, it's crazy.
And so with TMC being kind of now the industry standard, right? So
Industry leaders.
industry leader.
That's not even
and-
standard.
yeah.
They like left everybody in the dust.
Yeah. And so now with Apple stepping away from Intel with the M1 chip, right? They stepped away because Apple designed a chip or designed the schematics of a chip that could be used for a fabrication production line that was based on a 5 nanometer set. IBM doesn't have the facilities.
Intel.
Excuse me. Intel does not have the facilities, right? And the lithographs, right? So the lithographs are it's the most expensive part of the fabrication facility. It's what actually takes the schematics of the schematics blueprint that Apple creates or any other company makes. They send that to the fabrication facility, and the lithograph basically uses lasers to imprint,
Draw a map.
Yep, and draw that map onto the wafer, right? That costs a lot of money, right? Lithograms cost anywhere between $10 million to $100 million per graph. Right? So when you're talking about the amount of resources and the high dollar value to these pieces of equipment, it's a very significant investment. And so if you only have a handful of companies, or maybe not even a handful, right, of big manufacturers of semiconductors and microchip then you're going to have a decrease in supply. You're not going to be.
It's creating a bottleneck. Like
Yeah, it's
the
creating
pandemic.
a- it's
If there's
creating a
anything
crazy
the pandemic
bottleneck.
showed, is creating a bottleneck.
And so now we see the government step in, like Sarah said, to be able to subsidize, like Taiwan did when Morris Chang went to Taiwan and said, "Hey, I want to build my own fabrication facility. I have the know-how, I have the experience, I have the intelligence. I know how to do this. I just need the facility." Taiwan saw where the industries were going and said, "Hey, we'll help build this with you, because we know if we can create this as a manufacturing facility that can provide
Create jobs in the country. You're bringing in
and
equity.
you can bring resources and funds to resources and
Revenue.
funds to the country, and be able to export supplies and goods to the rest of the world. That's how you grow as a country." And so as we look at the United States, like Sarah said, it's all capitalism, right? The government is not going to intervene. It's waiting for capitalism to play its part. Which company is going to come to the top to be the biggest player in the game? But we are so far behind. We are so far behind as a country when it comes to the manufacturing of microchips. And if we touted ourselves as being the biggest or one of the biggest players in the oil industry, like I said, microchips are the new oil. And if America wants to be a player in this game, it's going to have to invest significant amounts of money into manufacturing facilities and fabrication facilities. Right now, what is it called, Sarah? It is the U.S. Innovation and Competition Act.
That's the one that's being put through Congress right
That's
now.
the
What's
one.
the dollar amount? I want to say it was
50 billion. It's
50 billion.
50 billion.
That's what it is.
So there's talks of $50 billion in subsidies that will go to companies that want to build fabrication facilities and other complementary companies and services to the semiconductor industry.
If we talk about the cost of starting one of these facilities being 10 billion, then that budget really only allows for 5 factories. I wonder who gonna get access to that money.
And so
That's a question I'd like to know the answer to. Yeah, I mean, the conversation at this point is to what lengths is the U.S. government truly gonna go to make the U.S. competitive in this microchip race, so to speak? Because at this point, Taiwan and China are like leagues ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not going to catch up in the next 5 years. That's not realistic. Like at this point, we need to come up with technology that's going to unsettle the direction that China and Taiwan have gone in. But when you have somebody like Morris Chang leading the charge, like how realistic is that, you know?
And so that and also that realism comes into the conversation with, you can't skip iterations when you're decreasing size in these semiconductors, right? You can't go
You don't go from 12 to 5.
Right. You have to go through the iterations. And going through the iterations, more times than not, every iteration requires a whole new facility. A whole new facility to go down an iteration. So in order for Intel's at 7, and at 7 nanometers with their microchips. TSMC is at 5, and they're working on to bring out the 3 nanometer in the next 3 to 5 years. So if we have Intel at 7 and TSMC almost at 3, how long is it going to take?
The gap?
Yeah, how long is it going to take Intel to catch up with TSMC continuing to be the industry leader and innovating the way that they are? It's going to take a significant amount of money from the American government to be able to get us ahead of the curve, or at least get us to an equal playing field, right? So yeah, that's really where the conversation is.
Did you want to touch on that other news, the other news item I had on the side?
Yeah, let's touch on it real quick.
Okay, so hold on, let me pull up the article real quick. So apparently there is a new social media platform that has come out from Trump's former spokesman, Jason Miller. He launched a new social media platform that is basically a clone of Twitter. It seems like they utilize Twitter's API, so it's like you have all the exact same features. It looks exactly like Twitter, it just has a different name. And the name is Getter. It's not on the App Store because there are obvious issues with privacy, so it probably didn't get approved by the App Store if they ever, submitted it there. Mm-hmm. It's on the Google Play Store because Google really don't care. They let any apps go up there.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation.
And it's a website as well, so it's present in web form. But this new social media platform is supposedly, their tagline is fighting cancel culture, promoting common sense, defending free speech, challenging social media monopolies, and creating a true marketplace of ideas.
Wow.
What are your first thoughts on that? Just give me, what's your hot take?
I see my hot take. I see this being similar to what was this being similar to Parler.
It has a limited lifespan, you think?
Not a limited lifespan, but
it's just catering to the far right.
Yeah, it's catering to a certain social demographic or a certain group of people that share certain ideologies. And while I feel that is I guess I would promote that in certain concepts. In this concept, I don't think that it is the best. I just don't think that it's good to bring this group of people that have these certain ideologies into one space with the mass amount of lack of privacy that they have on the platform.
If anything, this is gonna serve as a database for the FBI.
Yeah, like
because you don't have to be too smart to scrape this website in the state that it's in, because every post has so much personal information on the people that are posting that as from a cybersecurity perspective, like the people on this are really just laying it out for everyone to see.
Yeah, and I would be interested to see, how the platform is catering to the users, like how they're tailoring the experience, what what topics they bring up, what are the trending topics? Is it based on an algorithm off
Well,
of
it's
my
using Twitter's API, so it's basically a
Oh,
clone of Twitter. So the
right,
trending
okay.
topics are just gonna be based on whatever, the majority of the population is like tweeting about.
This doesn't strike me as a fight
For free
against
speech?
for free speech. It doesn't
Yo,
strike me as, hey, this is our stance against the social media
the cancel culture
monopolies
people
and
them.
cancel culture. No, I think this is just a
Such a
move
dumb
to
term.
to centralize a certain group that has
Give
certain
them a safe haven,
yeah, that has certain ideologies, and give them
a
a
platform.
comfortable area and platform to voice those ideologies. Um, we live in America, so free speech is definitely a thing. But
You're not free of consequences, though. You could say
yes,
whatever you want, but that don't mean you don't have to deal with the consequences of your speech.
correct. And I think that platforms that cater to those, I guess not minor ideologies or
Extreme.
those, yeah, I guess that's
They
a
would
better
be
word. Yeah,
extremist.
extreme ideologies so that they can have that safe haven. I just think that that's not the best. It's not the best approach, in my opinion. But I won't be on Gitter.
I say let the people them go on it so that the FBI could go ahead and handle the business, because in the case that we're looking down the barrel of a situation like what happened at the storming of the Capitol, they gonna go right
How
to
long
that
ago was
platform.
that? How long ago was that?
Why do I feel like that?
That
It
had to
was
be like 4 months ago now. 4 or
yeah.
5 months ago now. What are we in June? It had to be okay,
Yeah,
like
we in
so.
July now.
Yeah, so maybe like 6 months ago now. But even 3 months past. Crap? Why is it taking so long to invest this stuff? I mean, excuse me,
Investigate.
investigate.
Well,
The storming of the Capitol, like
they arrested a lot of people. It's I guess my concern is that our criminal justice system, I feel like there's a lot of performative stuff going on. Like, yeah, y'all arrested these people, but when it came time to actually prosecute them, like we didn't hear nothing else after that. You know what I mean?
that doesn't make any sense to me. That doesn't make sense to me. Let's. Do you have anything else about that topic? Anything else
No,
about
that
no? Yeah.
nothing worth. There's not a whole lot worth talking about there,
Yeah.
other than it being a cesspool of
You
craziness.
won't see me on Gator. Moving on. So before we wrap up, we just wanted to talk to you guys just about our podcast experience as podcasters. This is our 10th episode.
As beginners in the industry.
Yeah, as beginners in the industry, as it's only the two of us, right? We don't have we don't have a huge production team, right? Sarah handles, I would say, 100% of the post and pre-production, right? And so not only does she do and sit here across from me as my co-host, she handles a lot of the production, and
That's the fun part, though.
while it may be fun, it's time consuming.
It is.
To
Listen
to
to
go
the
through
podcast episodes like 5
how many,
times.
yeah. And we're on 10
probably more than
episode, right? So, it just takes a lot of work, right? And I see her, going over to the computer, spending 3-4 hours putting in drops, putting in different audio clips, making sure that we have all the links together for the metadata and comments of the YouTube page and the resources, right? The
video editing is a whole nother piece. Like editing the audio, that part is fun. Getting to understand Logic as a program, because before that, I didn't really use Logic like that. I've used iMovie a whole ton, so I was more familiar with that program as far as editing the videos. But it was a little challenging kind of getting into Logic, because like in the beginning we were using just one mic, and then we were trying to work out the audio so that we would both come in real crisp and loud so that everybody could hear us, both at the same volume. And it took me a while to figure out how to use two mics, you know? Like, I had to, how many YouTube videos, digging in the settings, and it's like the first time you're learning programs like these, it looks like French. Like, there's so many menus and settings and stuff to go through, but every time we recorded, it got a little bit easier as far as getting all the audio equipment set up. And then even afterwards, like some of the feedback that we got, and thank you to everybody who's listened and given us feedback. You're helping us get better. Every episode gets better. Some of the feedback that we got was that people wanted some music, some light production in the background, just to signal transitions and to kind of
dead space,
make people pay attention that, oh, we're changing topics. So it kind of works as a signal to help people recognize, hey, this topic's coming to an end and we're about to start another topic. So that has been, I appreciated that feedback, because listening back to the episodes that have the production when we're kind of transitioning topics, it kind of I love listening to, I'm a news junkie, so I love NPR and all their podcasts, and one thing that it kind of drew my attention to the fact that I enjoy the production that's behind their voices in those different podcasts that NPR produces. So yeah, for sure.
And so, a lot of podcasters, and I was having a conversation with one of my old lead geniuses. Shouts out to Mr. Ufnak. I was having a conversation with him, and we were discussing him starting his podcast. And he was like, "Hey man, I really admire you going and just starting your first episode, and not waiting to get the right equipment, to get the right camera set up, to get the right lighting, to make sure you got the right topic, to make sure that everything is just picture perfect before you start." Some people do it that way, but it don't
have to be all that.
It doesn't have to be all that. I just wanted to start talking to you guys and start thinking about concepts that I thought were important for people to hear about and learn about, and just take some of my expertise and some of my knowledge in the industry and my experience, and just start having conversations. We started episode 1, and now we're at episode 10, and there's been a drastic change of how we set up our entire setup, our pre-production of our conversations about what topics we're going to talk about, my note taking. I am a adamant note taker. Like, it helps me make sure that I can see the words in my head.
The info in.
Right. Like, I have to use, as much as I'm a technologist, I have to use some type of pen or pencil and write it down on actual paper for it to stick in my head. Right. So taking the time out to do that, making sure that I have my notes together before we get on and start having these conversations. Some podcasts are set up where you just show up, topics are thrown out, and you just start having conversations.
It's like a reactionary type of thing.
And while those are quite entertaining, it may not provide you with as much knowledge, right? And so then you also have some podcasts where they are so rigid, right? So structural,
segmented,
and segmented, and
it doesn't give enough space for flow.
Yeah. So I look at our podcast as being kind of a hybrid in the middle, right? Having educational component to it, where we have really core concepts and important concepts that we want to articulate to you, but also we have an open forum. It's an open conversation. Pretty soon here we're going to be inviting other guests onto the podcast. We're not going to be a guest.
I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
We don't really do the whole guest thing, because I mean
yeah, and the production of that is it takes a lot, right? Because the guests that we want to bring in aren't
they're all around the world.
Yeah.
Like China, US, like
to set up the audio for that, to get everybody from all over the world on the same time frame and scheduling, and then doing the call, making sure the audio was coming through clear, and then the post-production of that, making sure everything's equalized, and doing the editing. There's a lot.
Parks, but I'm trying to be.
So and speaking of which, I bring up the Joe Budden podcast a lot, right? That's where kind of my
Did you get some
my
inspiration there as far as being like, I could actually do this?
Super inspiration. Yeah, super inspiration.
Did Mal
because
inspire you?
Shouts out to Mal. But even though I have my current qualms and issues with Mr. Joe Budden, I see him as a visionary in the space of podcasting and definitely a leader in the space. And what I mean by that is his take on what podcasting is very genuine, and I think it kind of sets the bar for how his style of or that style of podcasting should be done. It's very
it doesn't have to be like a radio show.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be this radio production where you have all these different facets, and you may have a structure based on guests where you have to have certain guests on
and callers and all this craziness. Don't try and call into the Genius podcast.
Yeah,
send us emails.
And the other side of that is the independence factor, right? I am a huge supporter of independent creators and entrepreneurs, and Joe Budden is both. Right, he's a creator in his space of podcasting, and as well as being a musician, but then also being an independent, being the owner of his not only podcast but of his whole entire network.
And I would say his brand, because he kind of has he's on TV.
Yeah, he has
not making music anymore, but he's doing a lot of different entertainment.
Yeah, he has full control of his brand, and with that power, and where we are in the world today of the internet and all these different platforms, being able to control your control your brand, maintain your brand,
ownership,
and then being able to control and control where your audience goes. Right, that's the key. With podcasting, you can place your content on all the platforms. You can be on Apple, you can be on Spotify, you can be on Patreon, you can be on Pandora, right? You can be on all these
Pandora
different.
Mad picky, they.
Yeah,
but anyway, right.
So you can be on all these platforms, right? You're not segmented to just one area, right? You can now be a creator in the digital space, right? It gives the everyday person like ourselves access to these platforms. You don't have to be a singer. You don't have to be a producer. You don't have to be this musical
media
or visual
conglomerate.
Creative. You can express and articulate your passions through a podcast and be able to give that to the world. One of the number one things that I learned from listening to the Joe Budden podcast was the ownership of the RSS feed.
Yeah, that part was such... It was so hard for me to wrap my mind around in the beginning.
Sarah was so frustrated with me. She was so frustrated with me because I kept telling her, no, we're not going to use a third-party company.
Blurbery or RSS.com, or there's another one that I was looking at. And what they don't tell you is that by signing up with these different programs, that they retain ownership of your intellectual property because it's being hosted through their website. In order for you to maintain ownership of your podcast holistically all around, you need to make sure you have your own website, first of all, and you need to make sure that you're hosting your podcast on your website and not through auxiliary website. You know, because there's a lot of like gray area, and that's why I kept getting so confused and frustrated, because it's so easy to like side over to these programs because they're like, oh, it's so easy, all you gotta do is sign up and blah blah blah. But it's like, it's really
That's
not
the catch.
It's really not that hard. Like WordPress is not that difficult to use. I was able to build our website in like a week or two and get the podcast up and running in another week.
Yeah.
Like, the most difficult part after that is like keeping it rolling as far as creating the graphics, editing the audio, editing the video if you're gonna do a companion YouTube channel, which we have as well.
And that takes
pubbing on social media, like building the audience.
And that takes, to get at 10 episodes. That might not seem like
That's
a
a
lot to you
season.
guys,
Some people
but
only do 8 episodes as a season, and then they're like, okay, we'll see y'all next year.
right, the Joe Budden podcast is, I
They're
believe,
like
6 or 7 years in.
They're a couple
like,
hundred episodes in.
They're like at 480, I believe. Don't quote me. They're like 480.
They're recording like twice a week.
Twice a week. Sometimes 3 to 4 times a week for Patreon content.
Oh, yeah.
Right, and we'll get to premium content for podcasters. Right, premium content meaning that you can put your audio for free on these platforms, and listeners can listen to it for free. You can figure out different monetization strategies on the back
ads
end,
and
whether
stuff
it be
like that.
ads or sponsorships or things like that. Another side to that is then the premium content, right? So the Joe Budden podcast has the paywall approach, where his podcast is on multiple platforms for free, but there's premium content that's only available on Patreon. And so as a patroni or a patron on Patreon, right, you can pay, I think it's $5, $10 to $25, I think are his tiers, for premium access to premium content, or excuse me, access to premium content.
I don't know who's paying $25 a month.
There's a lot of people paying
I
it.
pay $8 a month for Netflix, and they give me mad content.
I'm paying. I think I'm the $10 tier.
Damn.
Yeah, I think I'm the $10 tier. But I mean,
you're a fan.
I've been a fan. I've listened to
listen to the free episodes.
I've listened to every single podcast of the Joe Budden podcast. But that's because for me, right, living here in the Virgin Islands, that podcast provides me, it's kind of like my my ear to all the music industry and other happenings that are going on in the entertainment industry and other things. Yes, it helps me keep my hand on the pulse in the States and around the world, because of the content that they cover and their access to different
areas of the industry.
Yes,
because you have Parks bringing in the production. You have, as much as Joe don't want to say he's industry, he's the most industry out of all of them.
Right, and so their team is, I would say, probably 30 plus. Right?
Damn, it's like that?
Yeah, they have a backering group that does all that. They have.
When are we bringing on some more employees?
See, I knew that.
JK.
I knew that question was coming. The work that Sarah does for the Joe Budden podcast, there's probably 5 to 6 people that do all the work that Sarah does.
They got Screen Man, they got Parks doing the mixing, they got Savon doing the research, they got all kind of people doing all kind of stuff. Meanwhile, me and my iPad Pro.
Yep.
You see how artificial intelligence replacing people's jobs? JK.
And so, the amount of work that goes into a podcast is definitely a lot. It's not something that you just wake up and say, hey, I'm gonna do this. However,
you have to be passionate and committed, otherwise you're just gonna fall off after 3 or 4 episodes.
Yes, and there are a lot of podcasts that get into the game thinking that you can just show up, pop up a camera and a light and a mic and just talk and it work. You have to be passionate about it. You have to put some real intent behind the podcast for that to resonate
with people.
Yeah, with people on the other side of the screen, right? And so our experience has been just one of learning, right? We're new to the space. I don't have any traditional background teaching on how to use a mic, vocal waves, and where to look, how to look, how many times to look. All the different stuff, right?
It took us a while. At first, YouTube, we was looking all over the place,
and having the character, right, to be vulnerable like that, right?
Just be open to learn and improve, and to level up on some stuff.
Mm-hmm, to just be on camera and know that you may not know what you're doing, but knowing that the experience and going through the experience is what's going to make you better, right? And so for anybody out there in the world who is looking into podcasting, that's listening, my advice would be is just to get started, right? Just to get started, figure out what kind of setup you can set up within your budget, and focus on what you're passionate about. Whatever setup you have, use it. What's going to come through on the screen is your passion and how you articulate your passion on what you care about, right? Our podcast is centered around technology, things that are going on in the economic markets, that are going on in our country and globally that are affecting our technology, use of technology. That's where our passion is. Find where your passion is and just get in front of the camera, right? Do you have anything, Sarah?
Um, Let me think. I think that the biggest pro, or I guess the thing that I appreciate most about being able to do this podcast is that when we have like interns or when we're teaching, we're able to like have this impact on like one or two students at a time. But like when we interact through the podcast, like we're literally able to like broaden that reach exponentially. So I can really appreciate that we're able to have that kind of impact.
Yeah.
Because, customers come in the store all the time and they're like, oh my gosh, you have a podcast. And it's like every day our listenership is expanding and it's growing, and we're getting more people coming to us with super cool ideas that we can do for, new episodes. And it's the exchange I really enjoy, because there are, in the world, there are people who are very ignorant of technology because it just changes so fast. And then there are other people that embrace it wholeheartedly and they're very excited about learning new things. And I really gravitate to those kinds of people. So it's been dope just being able to interact with them, bounce ideas off of people, and really engage in the conversation around entrepreneurship, around technology, and around art and design, because all of these things fold into each other. So I've appreciated that.
Another thing that I can appreciate is being a podcaster. It's helped me just articulate my overall understanding of the tech market, right? It's helped me better
put things in perspective.
Yeah, it helps me put things in perspective. I'm doing much more research than I was doing before.
I like that.
Would
We didn't
have,
news articles. You got to spread the love of the news.
You got to, right? To be a technologist, you have to keep up with what's going on, because
whatever you learned in high school is out of date now.
Every day. Yep. Things are changing. So you got to keep up. Being a podcaster, to then talk about those things, you have to do it 2 times as fast, right? So to keep up with everything that's going on, and to read all these articles and just be immersed in all this knowledge is awesome. It's daunting and it's a little tedious, but it's awesome, because I'm constantly becoming aware of things that are going on and how I can be an active player in the game, right? To make sure that I'm doing what's in my best interest and making sure that I'm warding off things that are attacking me negatively.
With some insight.
Yep, got to stay aware of what's going on. Another thing that I can appreciate is, so I personally have a speech impediment, right? And so as you
how has that been for you? Because it hasn't really, I mean, from me being your co-host, I haven't really seen it like surface.
For sure.
In a way that's disruptive.
Yeah, and so most people don't notice it until I point it out. And then after I point it out, they're not,
they hear it.
Yeah, right? And I start hearing it. And so you might start hearing it as I'm talking, right? But my speech impediment, I have difficulty articulating words that start with vowels. So A, E, I, O, U. Any words that start with vowel letters, the word sometimes is a little difficult for me to start. So there'll be a pause before I say the word. I've dealt with this since I was, when I started talking, it was 5-6 years old, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
However that is.
But I feel like the more comfortable you are, the less I feel like once you kind of start getting anxious or you start overthinking something, that's when it starts to kind of like edge in.
And so that's how the podcast has helped. I've been able to listen to myself through the podcast and hear myself where those pauses occur. And I can hear the pace of my voice being very, very fast and then coming to a pause. It's as if my brain is
trying to get
pushing out all these words and my mouth can't move fast enough. And so there's a stoppage point where the process of words to mouth just stops. And I have to think more about the word. And it only happens with words that start with the vowels. So hearing myself, I can now identify where those pauses occur, and I can be more conscious of my pace of when I'm talking. And so if I take
You practicing
more
that Caribbean sing-songy?
maybe if I take the pace,
Cadence.
that cadence, if I slow it down a little bit and breathe through talking, and not being uncomfortable with pauses, being comfortable with being able to transition between my statements, right? Being comfortable in the articulation, right? So these past 10 episodes, being in front of a camera, knowing that somebody's going to be listening and watching me, has increased my anxiety, but has also increased my awareness of how I'm talking and my speech impediment. And that awareness has given me the tools to be able to fix or analyze and improve my overall speech.
Look at you being empowered. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
so
yeah.
proud of you.
So I think that will help others as well. I know that there's a lot of actors that got into acting because reading scripts and acting, they may have stutters, but when they act,
It goes away.
there's no stuttering. Scientists and psychologists aren't able to explain it, but when they act,
I feel like you
and,
get in a
and
state
read,
of flow
and where that state of flow,
where your
how
brain
does
kind
that
of
trigger?
takes a back seat and you just you're
What-
in a very present moment. So when we talk about meditation, is about being present, about being grounded, being here physically, mentally in the now, and not thinking about what's coming next or what just passed by, like being here. I think you can exercise that same meditative technique of being present in different ways, like acting, art, reading, all of these different things. And I think podcasting might be that for you in a way.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a little bit of the speech impediment also comes from, so my my anxiety has been around ever since I was young, was those questioning my intelligence, right? And in common conversation in English, if you aren't able to articulate yourself at a certain way or at a certain speed, people start to question your intelligence or
very true.
your knowledge on a certain subject. So whereas I will have all the knowledge just sitting right here in the back of my brain,
You're just
I'm
trying to get it out.
throw it all at and hit you in the face with it, so you don't have any question as to if I really know what I'm talking about, right? And so that is where then the stutter happens, and then I shoot myself in the foot already,
feel anxious
because
you
then
hear
the
yourself
anxiety comes in,
stuttering.
and then I start stuttering, and then the pause comes anyway, right? So podcasting has also allowed me to digest and analyze more information, being more comfortable with that information, to then sit and articulate it in a more comfortable manner. So
With some razzmatazz.
yeah, right. So podcasting is I think a really, really awesome way to convey a passion of yours, as well as a way to maybe potentially monetize and profit from. If you are someone that wants to take an entrepreneur stance on your creative art, and I've just really appreciated it. The barrier to entry is very, very low. It's very, very low.
Yeah, you just need a computer and a mic.
Yeah.
And the editing software, but that's
sure.
kind of the barrier to entry.
For sure. So, like I said, if you're a podcaster out there and you're apprehensive about getting started, use us as an example. We didn't start with any production house or any really big budget
Fancy equipment.
or fancy equipment or anything. We took with what we had, and we found what we were passionate about, focused on that, and are just really trying to give compelling content that will resonate with you guys. So I think if you're focused on that, your audience will grow and the right equipment will come. We're going to be investing into some more equipment now that we're at episode 10, and now the next episodes we're trying to grow how the episodes are being framed. So like I said, we're going to be inviting in some guests. We're going to be doing some panel discussions. We're going to be doing some more mini segments, small like mini pods, and some workshops and things. So As we expand the style of the podcast, we're going to be needing some more equipment. So the subscription to the podcast is going to be very important for us. If you like what we're doing, if you
Want to support?
if you want to support, if you feel that we have compelling content and you want to support us so that we can keep creating this compelling content and educational content for you, please hit the like and subscribe buttons wherever those are on the screen. Right, hit those buttons.
I'm gonna put one right next to your head when I do the editing afterward. Point right where you want.
Right. So, but then also, we are going to be coming out with that premium content. We're going to be utilizing Apple's podcasts premium tiers to give you guys to put up a paywall, to put premium content behind that paywall, so that our supporters can support us through subscribing. Subscribing financially to our podcast, and then in turn be able to get some really, really cool content that I think you guys will enjoy. So please give us that feedback on podcasts that you are, topics of podcasts that you want to hear us talk about, or if you guys have a style of pod that you want to hear from us, please feel free to reach out to us. You can email us at joshwiththegenius@gmail.com. That's genius with a J.
Or thegeniuspodcast@gmail.com.
You set up that?
I did.
That email?
At the beginning.
See, doing more production work. Right? I had no idea. Okay, boom. So now we have a pod email. Awesome. And
just to keep it separate from the business, make it easier to talk to our fans.
Perfect. Separate taxes too. And then if you want more information about what we do here in St. Thomas, the Virgin Islands, we have a repair shop called Josh with the Genius that provides service and repair and maintenance to Apple products.
And training.
And training on iPhones, iPads, Macs, Apple TVs, Apple Watches, anything with an Apple logo on it. We provide training and supports and repairs to those products right here in the Virgin Islands. If you're a local or visiting the Virgin Islands and you need that help, you can find us at 5333 Rodisgata. It's right here in the heart of Charlotte Amalia, right off of Main Street in the downtown area, right across from Stonehouse Cafe.
The obscene amount of parking signs. I'm sorry, it's just crazy. It's crazy.
I know that we're closing up real quick, but I just
rant.
gotta say, just quick.
Rant.
This doesn't really apply to our listeners who aren't here on St. Thomas, but to those that are, the parking issues here on Main Street, it's just so difficult. It's so difficult to find parking. It is so difficult to find. What were you about to say?
When they made the plans to revitalize Main Street, a bunch of people were like, "Oh, we want it to just be pedestrian traffic only." So when they made the designs, they stripped out all the parking spots, and they made the sidewalks wider for pedestrian traffic, which cool, whatever. But where does everybody park now? Like, you don't let people park on the apron unless it's carnival. They have 3 spots in the Ford parking lot because all the government employees park there. And then it's like everywhere else you're gonna get a ticket because the police them hunging you where you're going. You can't pull over on the side of the road because the police them down your throat.
I'm not against the beautification of Main Street. I'm not against.
But if nobody can't come to Main Street because they don't have parking, look on Fridays when they do the little Miracle on Main Street thing, where they shut down the street and open it to pedestrian traffic where you could just walk down the middle of the road like you own the street. Mm-hmm. Nobody's showed up for the last 3 Fridays. They've stayed open 3 hours later, but nobody shows up. I wonder why. There's nowhere to park.
Yeah. So I'm not against the beautification. I'm not against the controlling the traffic flow and making sure that the cars are able to move through Main Street without creating a bottleneck. However, if you take away parking spots, you need to provide those parking spots in another area to provide access to parking to people that need to come to Main Street to do business.
To shop. everybody don't come down here to buy jewelry, like there are other there are hairdressers that are down here. You have other repair shops. You
There
have
are
game stores.
businesses that
There's so
provide
many stores.
services to the local community on a day-to-day basis that need areas for their customers to have parking that they don't have to walk 6-7 blocks to get to your store, right? Yeah. Areas where whether it be 30-minute parking, hour parking, whether it be metered parking, whether it be a parking garage. We're in 2021.
It shouldn't be this hard.
It shouldn't be this hard. I shouldn't, as a business owner, shouldn't have to be in a position where now I have to go have conversations with the Chamber of Commerce
and have them laugh in your face like, ha ha ha, right, like, you come to complain. Oh.
You are supposed to be the advocate for us, the advocate for businesses. Yes, the Chamber of Commerce is supposed to bring in revenue into the territory. I agree with that.
How do we do that?
But you're also supposed to support local businesses and the business community as a whole. So there's a disconnect there. There's a disconnect with trying to bring more money into Main Street.
What a mouth saying and what a hand's doing ain't matching up.
Yeah, to provide adequate parking for
access
and adequate access to local patrons. Right,
because handicapped spots is not enough. Like, come on.
And not even talking about the handicapped. Like, that's a whole nother conversation. What about the elderly? What about the handicapped that need to access some of these businesses? There's 1 or 2 parking spaces for them. You want them to park 4 or 5 blocks down and walk down, or you want them to be dropped off. And if they try to pull over, you give them a ticket. What do you expect them to do, right? So. I'm sorry, I'm getting frustrated.
Rent. I was going to say rent.
Okay, yeah.
Reel it in.
So, the just problems that you have to deal with as a business owner. I was having a conversation about independence with one of my interns earlier, right? And she said, Mr. Mitchell, you have all the freedom in the world. You own your own business. And I told her, I said, yes, I do own my own business, which means that I don't have to go ask anybody for me to do anything. However, my bosses are now my customers, right? I am holding to my customers. I can make a decision to close my shop and fly to Tokyo and go party for a week. Yeah, I have the power to do that because I own my business. I can close whenever I want to.
Be banging on the door for a week.
What about my customers?
And then they're gonna go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. So that same request for time off, right? That your 9 to 5 employees have to put in with their bosses, I have to put in that request of time off with my customers, right? And so I am an advocate for my customers, and every customer that has come in here into my store has said that it is difficult for them to do business in Main Street due to the lack of parking, right? This isn't me just as a business owner observing it myself. I'm getting feedback from my customers on a consistent basis that they're frustrated with how the lack of access to parking is, and it makes them not want to come do business down here in Main Street. So that's counterproductive to the beautification effort to increase people to come to Main Street
here to do business. Yep.
That goes totally against it. So
it does not compute.
Again, rant ended. If you're in St. Thomas and you need service to your Apple products, definitely come down and see us.
We offer curbside pickup if parking is a challenge.
Yes, we offer curbside pickup. Just give us a call. 340-227-3821. You can give us a call. Myself, one of my interns, or Sarah will come down and pick up your product for you, and we'll come and do that triage and be in communication with you with those updates. Okay. Another thing, if you're coming for payment for any of our services, we do accept cryptocurrency. Okay, we do accept cryptocurrency. We're one of the handful of companies here in the entire territory that accepts cryptocurrency. The 5 cryptocurrencies that we do accept are Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, Ripple, and Dogecoin. Okay, those are the 5 cryptocurrencies that we accept. So if you're a holder of one of those and you don't want to use your fiat or your physical money, your dollars and cents, you can pay us in that cryptocurrency through joshuathegenius.crypto. Okay, joshuathegenius.crypto. Like I said, I say to these guys, say to you guys all the time, it is a readable domain of a cryptocurrency public address that is very easy to send different types of cryptocurrencies for to buy products and to pay for services. Okay, you can find that if you are a business or an individual who wants to gain access to your own cryptocurrency domain, whether it be Andrew.crypto or giantgas.crypto, right? If
They did not pay for that advertisement, but proceed.
right. Right?
That's not an ad.
So if you want one of those domains, you can do that at kraken.com, or if you don't feel comfortable, you can definitely give us a call. Okay, give us a call here at Joshua the Genius, and we can partner with you and help you get set up. Okay, Sarah, did you have anything else before we log out?
We appreciate all our fans and our viewers. Hey, we love y'all.
Appreciate it, guys.
Keep the feedback coming.
Yes. And I think
I didn't have anything else.
Yeah.
No, that was it.
So you guys, we don't have anything else. We appreciate you guys. We appreciate you guys for
Sticking
listening.
with us.
Definitely provide us with some feedback, and we'll be in touch soon. Peace.
Deuces.